Hello everyone, welcome to episode 3, Thinking Tools for Anxiety. Um, as with all the other episodes in this webinar, this one's been developed by NHS Grampian CAM's Early Intervention team, and it'll be presented by myself, Karen Barber, who's a psychology practitioner within the NHS Grampian CAM's team, and my colleague Annabelle Nicol, who's also a psychology practitioner in the team. Okay, so as we know from the previous episodes, which you can go and have a look afterwards if you haven't seen it, or if you have, great. We know that there's this anxiety cycle, and we know that our thoughts, our feelings, our body signs, and our anxious behaviours are all linked. And we can see that if we have anxious thoughts, it probably make us feel really anxious. We'll have those physical signs of anxiety, heart racing, breathing faster, and then we'll do some anxious behaviours like leaving the party and go home early. So this one is going to focus on the anxious thoughts. So anxious thoughts might include everyone's looking at me, no one wants me here, I can't cope. And we can see how that might cause us to make us feel even more anxious. We're kind of thinking in that kind of negative way. Okay. So when we're thinking about anxious thoughts, I guess our thoughts can be our friends. We can be, think about how happy we are or how tasty the ice cream is. But they can also kind of be our enemy in our way, can't it? We can have these negative thoughts, these anxious thoughts that make us feel really uncomfortable and not very nice at all. Um, and I think as humans, we tend to focus on these negative thoughts more than the positive ones. And that kind of keeps that cycle going a little bit because we're focusing more on them. And when we're having more of these anxious thoughts and focusing more on them, then the problem is that we tend to think more in that way. And then that makes our anxiety increase and make us feel less able to cope. And it keeps that cycle going and it kind of snowballs and it can get bigger and bigger. And you might have your young person kind of being a bit of a overthinker or lots of what if thinking and getting into that cycle there. So when we're kind of having these anxious thoughts, we can have things around thinking that bad things are more likely to happen than they are, or thinking that we won't be able to cope. Which I'm sure if you were to think about yourself thinking of that, that would increase your anxiety. That would make you feel a little bit worse, wouldn't it? So this webinar is going to have a look at thinking tools, which can help us to reduce our focus on these negative thoughts, and that in turn will help reduce our anxiety. And then that'll make us feel better as well. And we think about that cycle there again. Now, these tools can be used for all young people, but you may find for some younger children that maybe the body tools might be enough, or if you have a child who has a neurodevelopmental condition such as autism or ADHD, that they might struggle to separate their thoughts and their feelings. So maybe those body tools might be more helpful for them. But you'll know your child best and you can try them out and see what works better for them. Okay. So the first thinking tool we're going to look at is grounding. Now, I really like this one. I think this is a bit of a fun one, and I think it's a really nice one to do. So when we think about grounding, it's about, when we're kind of in that anxiety trap, we can't get kind of away from these anxious thoughts. It helps us to refocus on the here and now, and it's quite a good distraction as well. So if you have someone that's got lots of what if thinking about the future or what might happen, then it just kind of reminds them where they are right now and reminds them that they're safe in the moment and just sort of takes them back there. So we're just going to do a little bit of a demonstration of how you might go through the grounding with your young person. Okay, so Annabelle, I can hear you worried about going to the park with your friends next week. When we have worries about the future, it can be helpful to ground ourselves back in the present. Why don't we try this grounding activity?
Yeah, sure.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to use all of our 5 senses for this activity. Now, do you know what the 5 senses are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell.
Perfect. Well done. Okay, so why don't we start with sight? So have a look around the room and tell me 5 things that you can see.
I can see my candle, pencil case, lamp, cushion, and my mug.
Brilliant. Thank you. So let's think about touch next. So have a look around and I want you to tell me 4 things that you can feel. Now you don't have to touch it, it could just be something that looks nice to feel.
My duvet, my fluffy rug, my my fluffy throw blanket, and my dressing gown.
Okay. Sounds like you've got some really nice fluffy things in your room there. That sounds lovely. Okay, so how about you tell me 3 things that you can hear?
The heater, it's really noisy. I can hear the wind blowing outside through the window. That's pretty much it. Nothing else.
Okay, that's okay if you can only hear 2. This task is about tuning into your surroundings rather than kind of getting the right amount of numbers, so that's okay. Why don't you tell me 2 things that you can smell?
I can smell my gingerbread candle and the coffee in my coffee mug.
Brilliant, yeah. Gingerbread candle sounds really nice. Still kind of keeping in the Christmas theme. Brilliant. Okay, so the last one is one thing that you can taste.
Coffee.
I wondered if that might be the case when you said you had the smell of coffee in your cup there. Brilliant. Okay, so that was really good. Thank you. I could see that you were really kind of focused on your surroundings and thinking about all, using those 5 different senses there. So how did you find that activity?
Good. I think it used a lot more of my concentration than I thought it would. And it's funny because even though I see these objects every day, actually it was like quite hard to spot the different things. And I felt like, oh yeah, that candle's over there. I hadn't really noticed it. So I think it kind of reminded me about what was around me.
Yeah, that's a really nice reflection. And I think sometimes we do kind of get a bit um, used to these objects in our rooms, and if we kind of it's going back to kind of focusing on what is actually there rather than kind of just being a bit blind to seeing it, isn't it? So no, that was really great. Thank you. Okay. So that's an example of how you do grounding with your young people. You can be really fun with this. You can do it when you're out and about as well. If you're walking through the woods or something, that's a really great one to kind of think about using all your senses, because there'll be lots of things that they can see and feel and hear and smell out there as well. Okay. And mix it up as well. It doesn't have to be 5 things you can see. You can have 3 things. There's loads of examples on Google as well. Pick one that your young person likes the look of. Okay. Okay, so the next one is looking at mental distraction. So sometimes that we kind of just need to distract ourselves from the worry if we feel that there isn't anything that we can do about it, or if it's kind of continually going around our minds, and just kind of give us that little bit of a break from it. Um, so mental distraction can be really good for that. Now, we have to kind of be a bit careful when we're thinking about distraction, because there's some things that are more a bit of a passive distraction, which means that maybe our minds aren't really being engaged or really focused on the activity. And for some people, that might be watching TV. I know that sometimes when I'm watching TV, I'm doing lots of other things and I'm not really concentrating on the TV. And then you kind of have to be like, oh, what just happened there? So when we think about mental distraction, it's something that's really taken our focus and kind of engaging our brains. Um, so it's kind of that we're not thinking about the worry, we're kind of focusing on that, which again we'll know will in turn kind of reduce that physical symptoms or the anxious behaviours and kind of reduce that overall feeling of anxiety. Now these can be done with the young person on their own, or you can get involved or get the whole family involved. With the mind games, particularly, you can make it into a bit of a competition. Who can get as many words as they can, beginning with a certain letter. Who can count backwards from 107 the quickest. Make it a bit kind of fun. Get creative with them. There's some really great ones out there. Now, if you want to kind of take a bit of a pause, take a photo of this slide, that's absolutely fine, because I realise there's quite a lot on there. It might be hard to kind of remember them, or save you trying to kind of scribble some of them down. So to take a photo, that's absolutely. So like I said, we've got the mind games there, which are quite fun ones, and there's also the engaging activities. So again, it's things that your young person would like to do. So whether they like to practice yoga, workouts, go with that, painting, drawing, things like that. Again, you know your child the best, you know what they enjoy, and you know kind of what engages them. So we're just gonna again have a little bit of a demonstration of one of these and how you might kind of introduce one of these to your young person. So Annabelle, I can hear that you're really worried about going to the park later with your friends.
Yeah, I get worried about silly things like what if I fall over? What if no one wants to talk to me? What if no one likes me? What if I just make a fool of myself?
Okay, I can hear a lot of what if thinking there, and it sounds like it's things that you can't really do anything about right now. So why don't we try one of these mental tasks to take your mind off these worries?
Like what?
Okay, well, I know that you're really good at maths, so why don't you try counting backwards from 50 in sevens?
50, 43, 36, 29, 22, 15, 8, and 1.
Well done there. I can see that you're really kind of focusing on thinking about what the next number is. It is a bit kind of tricky, especially with sevens, isn't it? You really have to think about it. Do you think that that helps you to kind of distract from your anxious thoughts?
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about them anymore. I think it's quite hard doing counting backwards, so I think when I am worried, it's something that would take my attention away from that.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Why don't we go and do another kind of activity like baking or something, and that'll keep your mind off of them. Brilliant. Okay. So that's just an example of how you might introduce one of these to your young people. Yeah, like I said, be creative, be fun with them, you know, think about what works for your young person. Okay. So the next one's thinking about a coping character and worry monster. Now this might be one for kind of younger children. Um, Sometimes having these characters can be really helpful to kind of help them to think about. So when we're thinking about a worry monster, you could maybe get them to draw what it looks like. There's lots of characters online as well if they want to choose a picture. And it's just thinking about this worry monsters, what is something in their brain that's kind of telling them all these negative thoughts, all these kind of anxious thoughts, such as everyone's looking at you. What if something bad happens? You can do it. It will go really badly and you will mess it up. So that's just some examples of what the worry monster might say. So get them to kind of write that down if they've drawn it out or if they've printed out a picture, what the worry monster's saying. Um, and it's just kind of introducing the idea that the more that we talk about the worry monster, the smaller he will become. He'll get a bit weaker, and thinking about how we can, I guess, stop him from being really loud in our heads, isn't it? So what we can do to kind of help battle the worry monster is create a coping character. Now this can be like a superhero, it can be whatever kind of character that your young child likes. It could be a character that they really, it could be like SpongeBob or Puss and Pat or something, whoever that they kind of really like. And this coping character would be things that are saying things like don't listen to your worry monster, what will help in this situation, you can do it, you are brave and can do many things. So again, get them to draw it, get them to print out a picture, get them to write what sort of things these coping characters can say. Okay. So again, we're just going to do a little bit of a demonstration how you might introduce that to your young person. Okay. So Annabelle, when we have lots of worries, that is our worry monster being a bit of a pain and trying to stop you from enjoying your day. If we talk about what he says, it will help him to go away. Okay. So what sort of thing does your worry monster say to you?
Stop talking. No one thinks you're interesting. Everyone thinks you're boring.
Hmm. That sounds a bit of like a troublesome worry monster, and that might stop you from going to see your friends and things, yeah? Okay. Why don't we create a coping character who can talk back to your worry monster? Yeah. What
Mhm.
could your coping character say back to your worry monster?
Mm, not really sure.
Okay. Yeah, it can be tricky to think of some of these positive things when our worry monster is in our brains, can't it? Okay, what about if your friend told you that they thought that they should stop talking, that everyone thinks that they were boring? What would you say to your friend?
I would say you've got lots of good friends, so they can't think you're boring.
Yeah, great. That sounds like a really great thing a coping character would say to your worry monster. Maybe we could write that one down? Yeah, okay. Um, So with these types of ones as well, you might find that young person like Annabelle really struggles to think of a kind of a positive coping thought. And that's normal, I guess, when we're kind of caught up in that anxious, negative thinking, it can be really hard. So you might need to help support that to begin with, scaffold that. Sometimes the use of using what would you say to a friend if they said it to you can be really helpful to get them to kind of think in that way. Um, okay. So for the kind of older children, teenagers, it might just be thinking of positive coping statements. And again, these kind of help to break out that cycle. They're very similar to the worry monster and coping character. Um, but I guess, you know, sometimes when we're thinking and kind of saying these positive things, it can remind us of the ways that we can manage our anxiety. um, I guess they can also be designed to help remind us that anxiety is normal, that it's temporary, that there are ways we can manage these feelings, and that, you know, the young people have managed anxious feelings before. It's just nice to kind of remind them of that a little bit and think about what skills that they have to help manage that. So they might be things around these are just feelings, they will go away. I'll be fine, I am safe. It's okay to feel worried, but I can manage this feeling. This feels horrible, but it's just anxiety and it will go away. I have done this before and I can do it again, or I can use my body and thinking tools and get through it. So it's really about kind of helping them think about, you know, what they can do to help with these anxious feelings and that they have those tools there. So I know myself when I get anxious, I kind of tell myself that I can do it and to take some deep breaths first. Annabelle, what could you tell yourself when you get anxious?
I could repeat to myself short term pain for long term gain to remind myself that the feeling's just temporary and it'll pass.
Absolutely, that's a really great one. You know, we know that we don't like feeling anxious, but we know that, like you said, in the long term, it might mean that we can go to the park with our friends and do things that we really enjoy. Brilliant. Thank you. So another way of kind of tackling those anxious thoughts is kind of thinking of positive outcomes. Um, so just kind of imagining what, you know, alternatives. So I guess sometimes when you have what if thinking, that we're kind of thinking of those negative outcomes, you know, I won't cope at the park, everyone will laugh at me, no one will want to talk to me, I won't know what to say. So the young person's almost going into that situation probably already feeling anxious because they have these thoughts around their heads. So it could be helpful to get them to think about a neutral outcome, such as it'll be okay, I can do this. So again, it's kind of linking back to that coping statements, or getting them to think about a positive outcome that might happen. So I will have a great time at the park and add to the conversation where I can. So again, it's kind of getting them to go in with a little bit of a change of a frame of mind, and then we know that that would kind of help with the feelings and the body signs there. Um, and again, it might be something that you might need to kind of support and scaffold around to begin with because they might be really stuck in that negative outcome and might not be able to kind of see any positive outcomes. So kind of sitting down with them and talking it through is great. Okay. And another way to kind of help manage these worrying thoughts is kind of these two different techniques here. So the first one is thinking about what can they control and what can't they control. Um, I guess for some children, distraction's just not enough, and they really need to kind of think about what's going on for them and what their kind of worrying thoughts are, and kind of acknowledge them and think differently about them first before being able to kind of move on from that. So getting them to think about what they can and can't control. can be really helpful. It can help them make them realize that there's something out with their control. And I guess then that can make them think, okay, well, I'm spending lots of time and lots of brain power worrying about something that I can't control or might not even happen, and getting them to kind of weigh up that pros and cons. Well, actually, you could be enjoying yourself by doing some baking or doing this instead. Um, so examples of what they can't control are things like what other people say or do or what's on the news. I think particularly in COVID times, there's lots of things on the news, there's lots of things on social media that they might be reading or exposed to, and it might make them feel worried. But these are things that they can't control. So kind of reminding them about that, but then making them think about, well, what can they control in that situation? So they can control their own actions, they can control what they say, they can control how they might relax or how they might respond to a situation. So reminding them of that they do have some control over some situations where it doesn't feel like there's anything that they can do, can be really helpful to kind of reduce some of those anxious thoughts. And another way is kind of getting them to think about what is a problem, a small problem, a medium problem, or a big problem. So the example that I have here is around kind of online schoolwork, uploading that, kind of accessing that, which is maybe one that your young person is kind of dealing with just now. Um, so I think for some young people, if they were to struggle to upload their schoolwork to the system, they might get really kind of stressed out, really kind of anxious. Why is it not working? My teacher's going to shout at me because I haven't done it. You come over to try and help, and they just end up shouting at you. You don't know what you're doing, and that kind of seems like it can get quite a kind of a big problem there. So getting them to think about, well, actually, it is a small problem. You can't upload your schoolwork, but that's out with your control. That's technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And getting them to think about, well, what can they do as an alternative? So maybe just messaging their teacher to say, I'm having a bit of trouble uploading this. It'll be with you as soon as I can get it working. And then a medium problem might be that the internet's not working. Again, it's something out with their control. Technology, we've all been there, it dips in and out, but it can cause a lot of stress for some young people again. So again, thinking about what might be something they can do. So it could be that mum might go and phone the school to pass a message on to the teacher because you can't access the internet, and letting them know, okay, they'll be with us as soon as they can. And a big problem, I've heard this for some young people, is that they feel really overwhelmed with the amount of work that they have to do or how it's being presented or the amount of instructions that are there. So it's about speaking to the parents. So it might be speak to dads, get guidance teacher involved to kind of see if the workload can be reduced or deadlines extended or, something kind of supportive around that to kind of reduce that. Because again, we know that when young people are really anxious and stressed, things like concentration and attention gets reduced because they're focusing on the worry. And if we kind of reduce the problem down a little bit, then that'll help with all those other things, and they'll be more kind of ready to learn as well. Okay. So that's just some thinking tools that you can go through with your young people. Again, try out a few different ones. There might be one that really works for your young person. There might be one that they just don't respond to, and that's okay. Everyone's different. It's about kind of figuring out the best one for your child. So just a bit of a summary there. We've kind of talked about what we think, how it impacts on how we feel and what we do. We know that doing tasks that engage our mind can help us reduce focus on the negative thoughts. Thinking about, can we do something about it? If not, worrying about it uses a lot of energy on something that we can't actually change. Is there something else we can be doing? Can we think of another solution to this? And try to focus on the positive coping statements. Now, I know that statement's a bit easier said than done. I've kind of said it before, that we're, I think if as humans, if it was really easy for us to focus on the positive coping statements, we all would. So they might need a little bit of help to do that. It will take a bit of time to kind of get into that way of thinking because that negative thinking is so automatic just now. Okay. Thank you for watching. You'll see that we have the rest of the episodes there, so please feel free to choose either the next episode or another episode that might be helpful for you. Thank you.